The man in the third row. The courtroom was unusually quiet for a Tuesday morning, the air thick with expectation. It wasn't full, but it held that kind of weight only trials touching raw nerves carried. A low buzz of whispers danced along the gallery as spectators settled into the wooden pews, the shuffle of papers and the soft creak of leather shoes the only sounds for a moment. Officer Raymond Collins leaned back in his seat near the defense table and elbowed his partner, Officer Stephen Laird, with a snicker. "Look at this guy," Collins muttered under his breath, gesturing with his chin. A tall black man in a sharp charcoal suit had just entered the courtroom. He walked with quiet command, his stride unhurried, back straight, the line of his shoulders squared in the kind of posture that spoke of old discipline. His dark tie was tied to perfection, the suit tailored so cleanly it looked like it belonged on a magazine cover. Laird smirked. "Smooth-talking public defender, I bet. Probably thinks he's gonna outweep the law with that charm and reason thing." The man didn't respond. He didn't even glance at them. He simply moved forward, giving a brief, respectful nod to the judge before taking a seat in the gallery. Third row from the front, center aisle to the two officers. He was just another face. Another black man in a courtroom. That was their first mistake. Outside, reporters crowded the courthouse steps, their cameras angled high as they gave breathless updates. The case had stirred something. A young college student, accused of resisting arrest and assaulting two officers, Collins and Laird. The body cam footage had, mysteriously, disappeared. Witnesses gave conflicting stories. The only consistency was the bruised body of 19-year-old Kean Walker and the testimony of two officers who insisted they'd feared for their lives. The media hadn't taken sides, but social media had. The community was on edge. There was something about this case, something unsaid but deeply felt. Inside, the courtroom's energy shifted subtly. As the prosecution began their opening, Collins and Laird leaned forward, smug in their seats behind the state attorney, whispering under their breath. Laird nudged Collins again and muttered, "What's he even doing here? Probably some cousin trying to look important." Collins chuckled lowly, oblivious to the glance the court clerk had given the suited man earlier, or the way the judge's eyes had briefly softened when she noticed him walk in, or how the assistant district attorney paused a beat too long before starting, her voice just a touch unsure. No one said anything. Kean Walker sat at the defendant's table, his hands clasped in his lap, his eyes heavy with a tiredness that went beyond exhaustion. His public defender, Ms. Haley Morrow, looked tense but prepared. Behind Kean sat his mother, Carla, her hands trembling with quiet prayers she whispered into clenched fingers. The prosecution painted their version clearly. Two officers doing their job, a suspect who ran, then lashed out. They were calm, procedural, as they read from notes and projected confidence. There were no bruises on the officers, no medical records suggesting injury, only words and authority, and the history of cases like this stacking up like a crumbling wall no one dared question. Morrow countered with clarity. Kean had been walking home from his friend's dorm. He had earbuds in. He didn't hear the officers call out. When he turned around and saw two men approaching quickly, their hands hovering over their weapons, he did what countless black boys in America had been taught to do. He raised his hands. "I told them I was unarmed," Kean had said in his initial statement. "And they tackled me anyway." Laird had taken the stand first. His voice wavered only slightly as he recounted how Kean had lunged at them, forcing them to restrain him. He spoke with a tone of righteousness, almost as though it were routine. Then came Collins. "We feared for our safety," he said solemnly, as if the phrase had been tattooed into him during police academy. He was aggressive, verbally hostile, but there were no threats recorded. No curses, no shouting, no visible aggression. Just one man's word against another's. Morrow rested her case. The judge called a recess before closing arguments. Spectators stood to stretch. The courtroom murmurs returned. That's when it happened. The man in the suit stood up from the third row as he walked past the gallery, past the startled Kean and his attorney, past the smirking officers who now frowned in curiosity, and stopped in front of the bench. "Your Honor," he said, his voice deep, and composed. If I may address the court briefly. Judge Lillian Edwards paused, her lips twitching at the corners. Then she nodded. Of course, Director Bennett. You have the floor. A visible shift rippled through the room. Director? Laird whispered sharply. Collins froze. What the hell? The man turned to the gallery, facing the room with calm authority. My name is Julian Bennett, he began. I'm the director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Gasps followed, muffled exclamations of disbelief. One woman dropped her pen. Carla Walker nearly dropped her purse. I came here today, he continued, not as the head of a federal agency, but as a black man in America. I came because I read this case file, and I recognized a pattern. I saw a young man criminalized for the color of his skin. I saw missing footage. I saw inconsistencies. And I saw two officers who failed to see the human being standing in front of them. He turned, eyes locking directly on Collins and Laird. Laird shifted uncomfortably. Collins looked at his hands. I've been stopped, too, Bennett said. Followed in stores. Had guns drawn on me while jogging through my own neighborhood. The only difference between me and Kean Walker is this suit and the title I carry. Silence gripped the courtroom. He continued, his voice resonant. I want everyone here to think about that. If I had walked in here today wearing a hoodie instead of a suit, you would have dismissed me too. Just like you dismissed Kean. Just like so many others have been dismissed before him. Then he turned to Kean. His tone softened. You are not invisible, son. You matter. You are not alone. No one laughed now. The officers sat rigid in their seats. Their earlier confidence drained from their posture like air from a balloon. Judge Edwards looked at Director Bennett, then nodded with gravity. Thank you, Director. He nodded once and returned to his seat, quietly. The room remained hushed even after Saturday. The jury deliberated for just under 2 hours. When they returned, the verdict was clear. Not guilty. The courtroom exploded, not with chaos, but with stunned awe. Carla burst into quiet tears, clutching Kean. Morrow looked as though she might collapse in relief. The judge offered a subtle nod of approval. Outside, the courthouse was flooded with reporters. The story had already broken online. FBI director shocks courtroom during trial of black teen. Video clips of the speech were shared faster than anchors could narrate them. Millions viewed the moment Director Bennett said, "You matter," before the sun had even set. But Director Bennett didn't stay for interviews. He found Kean and Carla outside on the courthouse steps. Kean, eyes still red but standing taller now, stepped forward. "Thank you, sir," he said quietly. "You didn't have to do that." Bennett placed a hand on his shoulder. "Yes, I did," he replied. "Because one day, it'll be your turn to do it for someone else." That evening, Officer Laird submitted his resignation. He walked into the precinct, laid his badge gently on the front desk, and left without a word. Collins was placed on immediate administrative leave pending investigation. The mayor's office issued a statement the next morning citing grave concerns over procedural integrity and systemic bias. Director Bennett returned to Washington. He sat at his desk overlooking the city, the Capitol dome framed by his office window. He thought about the trial, about the weight of the silence he'd carried for so many years, about the quiet anger that had followed him from his first field assignment to his first leadership post, to the very helm of the Bureau. He'd bitten his tongue more times than he could count. But not today. Not for Kean. He leaned back. The city spread out before him like an unfinished promise. Respect should never be determined by appearance. Justice should not depend on titles. And the worth of a man must never be judged by the color of his skin. Not everyone in that courtroom walked away changed, but some did. And sometimes, that's enough to start something.